We'll call the DPW Public Works Committee meeting to order. First thing will be the Parks, Rec, and Railroad.
You asked me about that property up on the river there, the Lake George parcel, on the river in Warrensburg.
Someone like to move the minutes of the prior committee meeting? Moved by Supervisor Frazier, seconded by Supervisor Hogan. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Carried. With that, I'll turn it over to Mr. Hajos.
Thank you.
Yeah.
The first item on the agenda on page 1 is a request for a notice of intent to fill the naturalist position.
You asked me something about one of the houses in there.
As you're all aware, Matt Sproul retired as of February, so we put out a advertisement to backfill the position. We had probably 6 or 7 applicants, all very good applicants. We did offer the position to Karen Beatty, who was the naturalist up there, and Karen has accepted the position. So now this is to backfill Karen's position.
Okay, would someone like to make a motion to bring it to the floor? Supervisor McGowan, seconded by Supervisor Dickinson. Any discussion? Call the question. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Carried.
The next resolution is on page 2, which is a request to transfer funds. Now that Karen has moved up to the administrative position, we have the natural position open, but she needs some help currently, so we're going to transfer some funds from the previous administrator's salary, which there was some left over. We didn't pay Karen the same amount, and we're going to use that for part-time help during the summer.
Moved by Supervisor McGowan, seconded by Supervisor Dickinson. Any discussion? Call the question. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Carried.
There are no referral or pending items this month, and for information for discussion review is stocking update, and I'll turn that over to Tim.
Okay, as of today, we are complete. We finished air stocking with the state on Thursday at Commerce Pond. All fishing derbies went very well this year. We just received our salmon today. Unfortunately, they had a problem up north this year with their amounts, so we're only going to do half this year, 1,500 instead of the 3,000 this fall. Any questions? Other than that, we are completely done with spring stocking.
I just want to say we had another successful fishing derby in the town of Horicon, thanks to Warren County Fish Hatchery Fish, and there was an awful lot of residents that were very happy, kids, families. It was packed. Supervisor McGowan?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just have a question.
Sure.
What is the purpose of stocking the fish and then having a derby right as you stock them? You know, did you let them, maybe swim around a little bit?
They do. They come in.
The whole purpose of the derby is for the children. All right. I don't disagree with that. I think that's a great purpose, but I'm just wondering, we stock these areas and then we hold derbies to take them out. And of course, they don't know the difference. They've just been swimming around in your man-made ponds there, and they're like, oh, food! And then the kids are like, ooh. That's why we do it year after year.
It's priceless to see the faces on the kids.
And that's all worth it. That's all worth it. You're right. It is.
Okay, thank you. All right. You want to do privilege of the floor now? Okay, well, we're going to move right to the privilege of the floor at this point because we're going to need an executive session to discuss the train contract.
I'll make that motion.
You don't need to make a motion yet. I'm going to let the privilege of the floor.
Okay.
Hey, good morning, everybody. I'm Mike Dupe from Revolution Rail. Here to talk about the lease. We've been working on a lease for the North Creek Railroad Station with Mary and Kevin. 2 items outstanding that they suggested we bring here, 2 requests from us. Before I do that, though, I just want to thank everybody for all your support over what has been a pretty eventful off-season for us. We're back up and running. We've had about 1,200 people in to date, sold out. The weather's pretty good. The breeze is up, keeping the black flies away, so everything's going pretty well. So thank you for your support there. On the lease, two outstanding items. One is that the lease was set up as a month-to-month lease. And one request we made of Mary was, could we make that a longer-term lease? We'd be looking to go out as long as 3 years, something like that, if that's possible. The second piece is, as you all know, we have an on-season and an off-season. And if there's a possibility for some rent relief in the off-season, when the building's going to be empty, unoccupied, that would be helpful to us as well. So Mary and Kevin suggested that I bring this to this meeting and put it out there on the floor. I'm not sure what the process would be from here.
I'm not sure if we have to discuss, an ongoing issue of what's happening with our
Understood.
with our railroad. I'm not sure if where the committee wants to go with this at this point. Is that a motion that, we don't have any motion on the floor, but we want to have our discussions about an executive session before we can, I think, talk about leases and all
Okay.
that at this point.
Okay. That's fine, but at least we get that out there. Those are
Supervisor
I think
Gary?
those are the two remaining items, and then we're ready to move on.
Supervisor Garrity?
How long is your lease for now?
It's in limbo, given the events of the last year. I think we were technically, we were subletting from Iowa Pacific. They're not on the lease anymore, and given all the uncertainty, we've been in contact with Mary, and we said, let's figure out what's going to happen in the bigger picture. And I know we haven't quite figured that out.
Supervisor Bramer?
I think there's a lot still up in the air, so I'm not sure that we could do anything more than a lease month to month, but the thing that I would ask is that the policy discussion about what we are doing with the railroad remain in open session and not discussed on.
I agree. I think what I said was the railroad contract and the
I don't believe
RFPs.
that that's a valid reason for entering executive session contract itself.
It's a discussion relating to the appointment of a corporation.
So I think that's, so we're going to have to be in contact.
And I believe it's also a lease of county-owned property. I believe we can go into executive session to discuss that.
That's going to affect the price.
Yeah, correct.
You okay? Any other questions?
I still think our policy discussion should be here.
Anything else from the committee? Motion to go into executive session to discuss potential contracts.
Chairman, I'm going to agree with Mr. Bramer. You guys, your standards for when you go into executive session are so arbitrary. I mean, you discuss leases with many companies in open session, potential business companies. You choose one like this, a very big one, to go into executive session. I don't think you have valid reasons.
That's your right as a board, whether or not you want to go into executive session. It's a valid reason to go into executive session to discuss contract negotiations or appointing a corporation, the potential appointment of a corporation. Also, if you're talking about lease of county property, that could affect the price if you talk about it in open session. Those are all valid reasons. You, as a committee, have to decide whether or not you want to vote to go in.
I'd like to see us have as much conversation as possible out in the open.
That's fine with me. It's up to the committee. What is the committee?
I think if we hit a wall, we just have to be careful and mindful.
I don't know what we're talking about. What are we talking about?
For a vote, if you have enough.
All right. Would someone like to,
What are we talking about?
we're going to have to see what the committee would like to do. Supervisor
Clarify
Frazier?
what you want to talk about.
Yes, we were going into executive session to discuss the potential contract terms, negotiations.
You're going to discuss the appointment of a particular corporation,
There you
right?
go.
I mean, I'm asking.
Yes.
I move we go into executive session.
Do we have a second? Okay, guess we're going to talk about it in open session. Supervisor Loeb?
And Mr. Chairman, thank you. If someone feels that we've crossed the line, that we should be in executive session, please let them speak up.
Yeah, please speak up. Okay, where do we want to start? So we had, do you want to talk about the two proposals?
Yes, we initially had 3 proposals. There was a purchase proposal that did not meet the RFP requirements that we released. We were down to 2 proposals for operating, one for United Rail. I see Mr. Kelly is here. Another from Omnitrax. Omnitrax has withdrawn its proposal. And the decision that we now have to make is we have one proposer that's still in the game. What are our specific concerns about that proposal? Is there a desire to negotiate with this proposer? If so, what do we want to get out of that negotiation? And how we want to move forward.
Everybody speak at once here.
Well, are there certain items in the RFP that we need to discuss privately about where we want to move forward? Is that what the purpose of?
We have that proposal, and there certainly could be issues. I haven't heard from everybody on the committee, or we haven't heard. Supervisor Bramer has a question.
Well, I just have a comment. No one's going to be surprised that I want to throw out another option is to reject any remaining proposals and have a different look at this. I've been advocating for a multi-use trail for years now. If we do not have someone that we're really super happy with, that's an option too, is that we allow RevRail to keep using the line, and we use it for other things like snowmobiling in the winter and public recreation in the summer, and we close it off to train. I think that is a valid option available to us, as I've said for a couple years.
Ryan?
Just to explain where I see this, even if Omnitrax was still in, okay, I have concerns about both proposals. Things that I view kind of with a cautious to negative lens on any proposal we receive. I'll be critical of and try to ask tough questions. I don't think it's right for us to do that to United Rail in open session when they may or may not end up doing business with us. That would be the reason to do that in executive session. This is a private company. I guess it is publicly traded, but there are certain things about this company and the proposal that are private that I don't think they deserve to have aired. Some of the concerns that I have about the proposal. In terms of the broader policy discussion that we have to have here, whether or not this line can be anything other than an active rail line is not in the county's ability to determine on its own. The rail line would have to be abandoned in order for us to pursue a use of that line that is not rail transportation. That's the Federal Surface Transportation Board. There's protections at the state level that would prevent us from disposing of the line when there's a going concern for rail traffic. The DEC has an active abandonment proceeding that they have since postponed, that they've stayed. We need to know where the DEC is going to go on that. We also, frankly, need to know where the Tahawas mine is at. That's the reason, the primary reason for the abandonment proceeding being stayed, is that as long as the Tahawas mine wants to have freight traffic, is interested in pursuing freight traffic, there is a going concern for rail traffic. We don't have the ability to come in over the top of that and say, no, we're not going to allow it. So before we make that kind of a long-term decision, those are two big unknowns that we have to face.
Cynthia and then Andrea.
Then I say we look into seeing if we can do that, pursue that first before we talk about hiring anybody.
Andrea?
Have we reached out to the DEC, and where do we stand in getting information from them?
I have withheld action to see what the committee directs me to do.
I have no report from the DEC. Chairman Conover?
Yeah, just to be clear, it was clearly stated, at least in my state of the county, that everything is on the table. Nothing is off the table until such time as this board takes it off the table. The vetting and searching for what possibilities might exist for any type of use are clearly out there. So I don't know that, I just want to make it absolutely clear to everyone that nothing here has been dismissed as a potential use for the corridor.
Supervisor McGowan, or did you have a question? Did you ever get
Well, yeah, I did. I just wanted, you know, I understand where Supervisor Brammer's coming from, but to sit on this track and make the decisions that, you know, the problem is the track will just become more deteriorated if it's not being used and not kept up. And there's still money that we're going to have to put into it. So, you know, I'd like to look at all factors of what we have to do. But I do agree with Mr. Moore that, you know, I think some of the things we need to do in executive, you know, for professionalism for, you know, the company involved. So.
Supervisor Loeb?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. We've discussed this a lot over the past many months, and one point that we, I think we pretty well settled on, I can be corrected, but anything that's going on with the railroad right now does not preclude the multi-use planners from moving ahead. I suspect that over the years ahead, we may only have one choice, but to make it a multi-use trail. But to make it a multi-use trail, that requires time and planning, so those folks can move ahead. I don't think we need to worry about that. I think we need to just address the railroad issue. We know there's freight up there, potential freight. We have questions about the viability of potential tourist train. We know there's value to the train to North Creek. If we have, we know that there's a cost to us of like $30 million every year if we just let it sit there. So if we have a contract that's being offered, Omnitrax has pulled out, we have some other bidders. Is there a negative associated with these proposals that these other bidders are giving us? Let's start putting it on the table. We're not in an executive session. Let's do it right now. Let's talk about this.
Supervisor?
Can you share with us the reasons that Omnitrax pulled out?
I can. Omnitrax, this was always, in terms of the options that a company like Omnitrax would have to invest their money in projects, this was always a higher risk project. High risk, high reward is the way they would characterize it. The reason why it was in their estimation a higher risk project is because you never know where CP is going to go in the future. Canadian Pacific, they own the track south of Saratoga Springs. If they have a change of heart and want to cut off the freight traffic or charge a higher price for the freight traffic than Omnitrax was willing to bear, that'll significantly change the business. In addition to that, Omnitrax was in negotiations with state DEC regarding not storing rail cars on the line north of Johnsburg that the county does not own. It's still owned by Iowa Pacific, the line that goes to the Tahawas mine. Omnitrax was aware that the county was going to have similar concerns about storage of rail cars on portions of its line, most notably Johnsburg. In addition, Omnitrax had been in a negotiation with Revolution Rail to come to terms where they could coexist for a number of years with, I believe it was 3 years. I was not privy to those negotiations. And then after that 3 years, trying to figure out how to handle Revolution Rail. Those two factors, the storage of cars and trying to exist with the rail bikes, kind of tipped the balance for them into making this, in their judgment, too risky for the investment. They'd rather spend their money someplace else, is what it comes down to.
Supervisor Diamond?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I know at the last meeting we discussed in great detail about the process going forward, and it was decided at that time that the RFP was not being presented to the committee for specific confidentiality reasons, and it was decided at that point in time that a matrix would be developed and shared with the committee as a result of the reviewing of the RFP. I personally feel that I would like to be able to review the RFP. We're down to one individual that has responded. The other one has decided not to continue on with the process, and review the RFP so we can set some parameters around what we want to do going forward, and if it means doing it in open discussion, I'm fine with that, but I need to see the contents of the RFP to feel good about where we're going with that discussion.
Supervisor Bramer?
Thanks. I just wanted to respond to Administrator Moore's comment that DEC stayed the proceeding for Tahoe. I've reviewed the proceeding filings along the way, and my understanding was that they stayed that abandonment proceeding for Omnitrax. That Omnitrax had a going concern, that they thought they were going to be able to take something out of the mine. Now that Omnitrax is out, I definitely think we should check with DEC and see what they're doing with the abandonment proceeding, because if Omnitrax is out, Tahoe, Mitchell is already removing that material by truck. It's not like we're shutting him down or anything. He's continuing to operate whatever he's doing with the mine via truck transportation. And the idea that we will use this for a tourist train to get to North Creek is just, it's taken us back 20 years. We've tried that. We tried it again. We tried it with Ed Ellis. It's not a viable option. If we wanted to make it really viable, I agree, freight, if we had someone really wanting to move freight and to pay the prices and help us upkeep the costs, I would not be opposed to that if it was, but Omnitrax, I was allowed to review the responses. I had to make a special appointment to go review the responses. Omnitrax had a freight operation that they were proposing. The others are not proposing that same thing, so to me, they're not viable.
Supervisor Bramer, I just want to let you know, there is on the STB website, the DEC and Omnitrax, they both have had filings there, and they've granted another 60-day, just a few days ago, another 60-day abeyance.
What date was that made?
It was a few days ago.
I just think we should go back to DEC and find out what they're thinking now that Omnitrax is out.
Yeah, the application was in before Friday. Supervisor Leggett.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. To play off what Supervisor Diamond just said before us, is one proposal left on the table. It's gone through a review by the administrator through a matrix here, and since we have representatives of that offer in front of us, perhaps they can offer some detail to some extent of what that offer is.
I just want to let everybody know that everybody's been emailed the matrix.
Yes, we were.
Every supervisor has that.
I have it right here, but just to hear some things from United Rail.
So what would the committee like to do?
I would love to hear from United Rail, but I hate to make the, I think we all need to look at the proposal and come back with questions, so it might put them through the process more than once.
Mr. Garrity, you had your hand up first.
Well, my question is, I'm sort of with Supervisor Bramer. If there's not freight on this rail line, it's not going to be viable. So if they don't have a proposal to run freight across our portion of the rail line, then there's no sense in talking about rail on this line anymore. It just won't happen. And 1992, I was told that by Canadian Pacific. If you don't run freight on this rail line, you're never going to pay for a tourist train. So I think we're spinning our wheels unless we know, is there an option that they have to run up to Hawes to get the tailings to run on this line? If not, then let's go in a different direction.
Actually, Supervisor Frazier.
Well, no, I just wanted to say, I thought that was the point of having that sent out to us. That was my understanding from
I agree.
Mr. Moore, that he expected we were going to take the time to read it over. So when we came to this meeting today, we were ready to discuss it. Maybe I misunderstood, but we had it a week ago. We had it before Memorial Day, so it's not like we haven't had time to look it over and at least read it over and have questions that we could have brought forth today.
I was proposing that we all read the actual proposal. I've read both, and I think the committee needs to read the actual proposal.
Whatever, I just know we had the other one.
So maybe we should have a show of hands. Do we want to go forward with looking at the proposal from United, or no?
Before we vote on that, can I just say, well, just in fairness to the proposers, a question came up during the process because the proposers were all very aware that the county looks more favorably on freight. But the question came up, would a proposal be rejected because it was based in tourism and not necessarily in freight? The answer is no. We wanted to take a look at every idea that was out there. And in fairness to Mr. Kelly and his team, that's the information they were operating under. They feel they have an opportunity to make the tourist-focused model work where others have failed. If that is a direction that this committee would like to go in, we can explore that with that team. But I just want, before we take a vote on whether or not to move forward, I just want to make sure that we're all operating under that understanding and that we don't penalize them for responding to what was a very open request for proposal.
Supervisor Hogan Henry.
I don't think we can compel somebody to explore freight when the second largest freight carrier in the country just told us they didn't think it was a workable scenario.
Supervisor
Did
Wells?
I get that right? I mean, that's what I heard.
That's one company. That's not to say that
The
it...
largest freight carrier in the country with the most resources.
Supervisor Loeb?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. With regard to the tourist train and the proposal, it's May 30th. What season are we looking at? We know from hard experience that the winter season is not something that's going to be viable. Summer season is here. And to postpone this to June, basically we're talking 2020. What does United, what are they proposing? To do something this year, or are they willing to talk about this for 8 months before they start putting their money into the pot? I don't think we can
quickly
dilly-dally around this at this point if we're talking about this season.
Questions for us? Let's ask them. I think these are questions for United.
Correct. These are things that we would follow up with United based on the proposal. You all have the information. They have a relatively aggressive profit calculation for 2019. So that assumes that they start up right away.
Supervisor Garrity.
Are they prepared to answer some of those questions today, or?
That'd be a question for Mr. Kelly.
For purposes of the record, my name is Jack Kelly, consultant representing United Rail at this meeting, and did participate in the preparation of the...
Could you go over to the microphone, please?
That was a mistake giving me the microphone here. With all true seriousness, I will be able to answer questions that's within my knowledge. We did take an offer to have our president and vice president here today to put on a full presentation. We still would like to have them come here. First of all, let me say I did enjoy very much the discussion that was taking place and the concerns that this committee has. We share many of those also, and I can answer questions that were addressed in the RFP response. And please bear with me if there's some questions that I feel that our executive should answer. I'll advise you accordingly.
Supervisor.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Mr. Kelly, I appreciate you coming here today. However, it's going to be very difficult for me to ask you any questions in response to the RFP that you responded to because I haven't seen it. I know that we had a matrix done based on information, but it's very difficult, at least from my perspective, dealing with RFPs without reading it, asking justifiable and good questions without reading the RFP. So
I think that's a very good observation.
I would prefer the committee table the discussion and those that want to see the RFP and take a look at the matrix that we've been presented. There's a lot of work put into that, and then have this discussion, question and answer session. That would be my preference. I don't know why that couldn't be done within a couple weeks' time, reschedule this so time is as Mr. Loeb put, on the essence to move forward, but without having the details, it's difficult to ask.
And I share your observations. I think that I can make a phone call, I can get back to the administrator or have our executive vice president. I don't see where there's any problem at all in releasing the document. At one point, there would have been when we gave some proprietary information in there as it related to financing, if there were other entities that were in competition. Basically, if I may, Mr. Chairman, our business plan shows that we can take and make a profit by running an excursion train from Saratoga to Corinth, and I emphasize Corinth because they are a major player in this whole process, belong to North Creek. Basically, the second week in December is when I gave these people a tour along our line. It happened to be a day when there was 1 inch of snow, and typical Chamber of Commerce day where blue sky and big puffy clouds. And it seemed like every turn that I made up around Warrensburg and Johnsburg, they wanted to stop the car and get out and take some pictures. So we were having lunch at Izzy's in North Creek, and I threw the question out to them. I said, well, what do you think? Do you think that you can do a excursion operation here? And they kind of chuckled and they said, well, we run a very successful, profitable one right now in Indiana, and it's from one cornfield to another cornfield, and all we have is a cornfield to look at on the way. With these kinds of scenes, they feel that they can do it. They have hired a very successful, internationally known marketing entity, which happens to be located in Saratoga Springs, but they do major work that's going to be marketing this whole process. There's a whole methodology which we'd be happy to share with you as to why we think we can be better. We also would like to do freight, but the business plan is a realistic one that shows that freight is going to need to be something that is developed over a period of time. First, as Supervisor Garrity knows, would be International Paper Company at Corinth has great opportunities, and they already have people who have an interest, and I have other clients that have an interest, but rail plays a very important role. Yes, we would very much like to be taking those tailings out of Tahawus, and yes, we've met with Mr. Mitchell and had those discussions, and however, our business plan isn't based on doing that. And I agree that CP Rail probably at one point said that freight would be the only thing that would work along that rail line. Well, CP's in the freight business. They're not in the passenger business. And this is a different business plan. Plus, the quality of the rail when the International Paper Company was there was substandard. A lot of money's been put into it. It's up to Class 2 level. We've also met with Revolution Rail, and we have basically a handshake agreement that we can take and work together and be able to work them into a schedule that coexists, not only in the North Creek area, but also in the Corinth area. And there may be other options available. So I think that you have some concerns. We'd like to sit and hear them. I did hear a lot of comments that were put out that aren't true from our particular vantage point. Just give us the opportunity to take and do that. And our other person, Steve Fisk, who was head of business development for CP Rail, freight's got to be developed. And whether it's the truss operation in Riverside that can expand their operations, or to bringing road salt into municipalities during the instead of bringing it in by truck. There's a lot of things that we all got into a room, we could think about doing those. The thing is that and we're willing to work with the other entities who have visions for multi-purpose along the rail line. We feel that there can be some coexistence, but it has to be safely done.
Supervisor Loeb.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like to hear, Mr. Kelly, again, it's May 30th, what your time frame is, what season, what your ramp-up schedule would be. I know there are, I believe, intersections have to be reopened. There are things that have to be done to get that this rail section up to useful quality. May 30th, what if we said right now, okay, let's do it, what would happen over the next 30 days?
Well, I spoke with Mr. Moore on the phone because we're interested in a timeline, because it takes 2 to 3 months to bring rolling stock in of the quality that we would want to use. And while he did not commit anyone for back of the envelope purposes, I said, well, do you think that we could have a meeting, and will the board be doing something at their June meeting? And he very quickly told me that no, that was not the case, and hypothetically July might be an opportunity at your board meeting and we'd do all the negotiations and have our meetings and discussions and etc. If that took place, it is hopeful that something could start around September 15th with some kind of limited fall foliage. I mean, if we miss that fall foliage, that's one of the most beautiful times of the year that we have up through here. But we would definitely continue with some kind of Santa type of process. We are going to keep Christmas in the rail process, and then there would be some kind of restoration of ski trains. To what extent? A lot of that depends, and I think you very accurately, we've got to go and high rail the line. We've got to see what needs to be done. Are there any washouts? There's a lot of things that need to be done, but that would be our anticipation. And then rolling starting next spring with a full schedule. We've met with CDTA regarding leasing space at the train station in Saratoga Springs. I've met with some business people in the North Creek area to take and see if there is a desire and a need for that kind of activity to take place. I'm from this area. My mother was born in North River, so we've got a lot of roots. Of course, I'm from Corinth, and there's a certain amount of they say when you deal with commercial real estate, you shouldn't get emotionally attached to something. I've got to plead that I'm guilty here, that there is some emotion. But I think that when you look at the southern Adirondack region, that all of you have a responsibility for, I don't know of any other viable economic development initiative that would take place without the use of that rail line, and especially being used in an excursion type of operation. I base 30, 40 years of experience in economic development with that statement I just made.
Right.
One question, a central question that I actually have, and if you can't answer this, if you want you to regroup and get back to us, fine. On the financial end, the county owns this railroad. That requires significant expense just to keep it in the state it's in now, where we're not running anything on it. This line, certainly in the short run and the long run, will need, we think, some significant investment. The proposal spoke to regular maintenance costs being included to be the burden of United Rail. I did not see a capital expense line. The other proposers had capital expense programs, longer-term, multi-million-dollar programs. We, through DPW, offered to take proposers out on High Rail and check out the entire line so you could really get a sense of that. I'm not sure that your group did that. We would still offer that out. But if you could speak to that central issue of if the county turns this over to United Rail as an operator, how much does the county still have to pay? It's our infrastructure. Are we doing maintenance that is not characterized as normal, and how would that be characterized? Are we responsible for the long-term investment, the utility expenses, brush control, herbicide, any environmental liability and compliance? That's one of my major issues of concern.
Those were all CapEx expenditures that we expected that would be our responsibility. There, I think, in the area of negotiations, discussion as to what the amount of payment would be for that lease or right, and how that money would be, whether it be just paid over or whether it would go into a fund that would be jointly administered for those kind of capital expenditures. I think those are areas that we need a lot more discussion. We need to have a better handle also, which we're really going to do, is to put the time and energy in to go and inspect the line and come up with a detailed budget item. Any information that the county has would be most appreciative, but I think that putting it in real estate terms, that we were looking at this as a triple net absolute lease, which basically the best way to do it is the landlord gets a mailbox check every month. And we'd have the responsibility for not only the day-to-day maintenance, but also the long-range capital expenditures. And the difference between a triple net and triple net absolute would bring it down to a different level. Is under most cases a triple net, the landlord's responsible for setting up a reserve fund for replacement of the roof, for repaving the driveway, but an absolute, the tenant would pay for all of that.
But that, I'm correct when I look at the 5-year financial plan and say that's an operating plan, that those capital expenses are not included.
Correct.
But it would be the intention of United Rail to free the county from as much of the short-term and long-term costs as possible.
Correct, and at the same time, we would take and apply for as much federal and state grants that would support any of that kind of capital investment requirement.
Chairman Conover?
Yeah, as more of a comment than anything, just to Ryan, that that this point needs to be completely vetted, and there needs to be absolute clarity on this point, because this has to do with the financial responsibility of the 50 miles of infrastructure going forward. And if it's not reflected in the business plan, then that's a concern. I think, is that your point?
Yes.
And I can understand that point. So it's more of a comment than a question.
And Mr. Chairman, I also share those comments, and I think that the best place for that to be done would be during a very structured negotiation period.
Supervisor Loeb?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In the infrastructure aspect of, I heard a comment of Lisi doing as much as they could. I've also heard comments over the past couple of years that we have bridges that have to be addressed. So we're going to we're going to be dealing with, let's just pick a number, a $2 million business plan when we have a bridge that costs $5 million or $20 million. That's a poor investment on the county side. I will say, we've got two choices right now. Either we don't do anything with this and we go to the multi-use plan, or we decide we're going to do something with this operator. And then if that's the case, we should say, we're going to do something with you, and let's start looking at RFP, schedule something for 2 weeks down, but also give some indication of what we want to do to Mr. Kelly today, not put it off for a week. We've talked about this long enough. We know either we want to do it or we don't want to do it, and we only have one operator. Thank you.
Mr. Rezzagardi.
I'd make a motion that we reconvene within 2 weeks' time, if that gives Ryan enough time to get the jack and we'll get all the information out to the committee, and then reconvene in 2 weeks' time for the purpose of meeting with United Rail.
I'll second that.
And drill down on the concerns.
I'd like to make a quick comment here. I'm Jeff Glora, representing the town of Corinth. Lucia wasn't able to make it today. Whatever decision you guys make here, it's kind of predicated upon the decision we make in Corinth. If we decide that, this isn't the plan that we want, or something we feel is a good fit for us, what you guys do here is kind of moot. So, I don't know if you guys should come address us first before they come to you, because, if you guys approve it and we don't, then, they're not coming over our line, basically, is what it...
Can we do a joint meeting?
We should.
Yeah, fine with me.
Or you do it next week?
Is there anything you can say on the record in an open forum regarding how Corinth views this proposal?
We'd like to keep the line open for industry, I can tell you that much. That mill site's very important to us. It's 200 acres. It's got water, it's got power, it has rail line, and it's an important industrial section for us. So we're not really interested in abandoning the line. I'm sure we won't do that. But that's what I can tell you right now. And these guys are the only game in town right now. So if they want to take our line over, as long as we like what they're proposing, I don't see why we wouldn't do that. They're going to, relieve us of the burden of insurance, general maintenance, and a certain amount of infrastructure costs. Right now, that's costing us money, the same way it's costing all you guys money. So we're not disinterested, but we need to hear the whole plan, and we haven't really heard that yet. So a joint meeting could work, but maybe they should meet with us first with a little bit more detail. Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, for purposes of full disclosure, we did respond to the county's RFP, supplied the appropriate number of copies, it was 11 or something that was required. But as a courtesy, we also, the same day, responded with electronic and hard copies to the town. We've been there on 3 separate occasions to discuss with them general aspects similar to what I'm discussing with you people today. We would very much like to have this as a joint process. It makes a lot of sense. If you go up to Antone Mountain on the south side of the right-of-way, there isn't a big red line drawn there that says Corinth or Warren County. And we should try to make this as seamless as possible to United Rail and to the people that are going to be utilizing that rail line in the future. There are some individual differences and concerns which have to be discussed with each party, but I don't see any reason why representatives from both entities could not be there in the room at the same time. If that turns out to be your wish, or we can negotiate it separately, but I think that'd be a lot of waste of time.
Mr. Kelly, could you forward an electronic copy of your packet to the county administrator, please? also? Because I don't think we have that.
No, we have the hard copies, and it'll save us a lot of time and energy in scanning, because it's a very awkward, large format.
Right.
If you're able to send that electronically, that'd be great. And if I could just clarify, are you comfortable with the entire RFP contents being a public document at this point?
I'm going to need to call and get the permission for that to be released, but from my recommendation is for it to be released, whether there's some individual pages or something that we...
Okay.
I mean, it's a big thing now to have things redacted, and I'm not really in favor of that, but...
You just let me know.
Okay, are we ready for the question?
Well, I mean,
Any other discussion? So we were going to set up a meeting in 2 weeks with...
well, if Corinth thinks that they would be prepared to come back in 2 weeks, I mean, you need 3 weeks.
I think 2 weeks would be...
2 weeks is fine.
I think we saw the RFP, I think we had that.
Yeah, we sent an electronic copy,
Yeah, I
and
read
we
that.
sent hard
Did we?
copies.
Yeah. Well, I'd have to...
Why we didn't send you an electronic one also, I don't know, but we'll be more than happy to get that out this afternoon to you.
I'll tentatively say 2 weeks is good.
Supervisor Dickinson.
I'm a little concerned, Mr. Kelly, if we meet in 2 weeks, are you going to be able to answer this question about the main sum? You were spending $300,000 just to keep the line in shape. It's not really ready to be open. So, you know, you're easily looking at $500,000.
I know that Steve Fisk has been requested by our president to put together a CapEx budget. He would be here today, except that his daughter-in-law had a baby girl, and he's in Florida. But he will be back and on the job next week, and we will make it a top priority. Is there any way that the committee or the county could authorize that we could receive a copy of what you are anticipating your expenditures are going to be, that at least would be a benchmark for us to begin with?
Yeah, we can do that. Okay, are we ready for the question? To meet with Corinth in 2 weeks.
You'll have to set that up with Supervisor Lucia, but tentatively, I said we may be able to do that.
Come get
But,
me.
Yeah. Are we going to vote that day? Do we need a quorum, or what? I mean, I don't think we're going to be approving anything, just an informational type.
Yeah,
I don't see any problem with that.
There's a lot to hash out.
Yeah, there certainly is.
And correct me if I'm wrong, not to speak for the town of Corinth, but are you thinking about the best time for Corinth to meet with its people is around 4:30 in the afternoon? Or can you arrange the stuff during midday?
I think midday's fine. If I'm
Okay.
going to be here, I work for myself, so I can get here.
Okay, we'll call the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
And, Mr. Chairman, if I could just make one observation. You're all to be congratulated. It was a very good RFP process, and especially Mr. Moore, you were very attentive and was very fair to us, and I assure that the same courtesies were extended to other parties. So
Thank you.
It's been a good process to date.
Thank you for the work that went into it, Jack. We appreciate it.
Okay, anything else before Parks, Rec, and Railroad? If not, we'll move right into... Did you have anything else? We'll move right into DPW. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I need an agenda, though. I don't have one.
We got a permit to expand, we got a speedies permit from the DEC and a permit from the EPA. No shit.
My gift to you.
Too bad everybody didn't listen to you.
Can't we
just read the whole thing?
Some light reading tonight. That's okay.
I don't believe that.
Last Dick Wentworth.
That's what you said. Gee, Andrea, sometimes.
Are you good to go?
I'm good to go.
Do we have any more copies of that?
I'm with you.
Kevin, is that an extra copy down there of the DPW?
You don't have one?
Oh, you want the
Are you all
agenda?
set?
Yeah, right there.
I'm ready.
Oh, okay.
I'm ready.
Go ahead, Mr. Ajos.
DPW.
Okay, everybody.
How it works?
The first two items on the agenda are, the first one is to decrease capital project H352, which is a bridge painting project. This was for the South Horicon Bridge as well as the Glen Athol Road Bridge. And the second one is to authorize the closure of that capital project.
I'll move it.
Second. Moved by Supervisor Garrity, seconded by Supervisor Dickinson.
Are we 1 and 2?
Is that 1 and 2?
Is that 1 and 2
Yes.
together?
Yes.
Sure.
Yes. Any discussion? Ready for the question? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
The next two items, which are on page 3 and 4 of the agenda, are a request to establish capital project H387, which is the airport fuel farm. Basically, this is a replacement of the fuel dispensing equipment, and the request on page 4 is to transfer the funds to the capital project. We had set this up in the budget last year and put it under 5140-470, which is road.
Moved by Supervisor Dickinson, seconded by Supervisor Garrity. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Sorry. Mr. Ajos.
Okay. The next item on the agenda is enter a new contract for guide rail installation. You'll see based on the tab sheets that are on page 7, 8, 9, that Chemung Supply actually came in cheaper. They then sent us a letter, and Julie can maybe touch on this, that they thought this was just for new installations and not for repair, maintenance, and on-call basis. So they asked to withdraw, and the county, as well as the purchasing, both agreed to withdraw. So now we're going to award it to the County Bridge and Rail. Actually, I said Julie, she's not here any longer.
Supervisor Dickinson.
Move it.
Seconded. Let's get a second. Get the floor. Supervisor Garrity. Discussion?
Who you going with now, Kev?
Town and Country.
Town and County Bridge and Rail.
I'm amazed Chemung did that. Didn't we have an issue once before where they tried to match pricing after we put out a bid? My brain, I remember that, so I'd second that motion. Disappointed that they would do that.
Okay, we'll call the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Carried.
Next item on the agenda is a transfer of funds to salaries. This is just basically related to the last of the snow and ice operations for March and April.
Moved by Supervisor Loeb, seconded by Supervisor McGowan. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
The last two agendas items are on page 11 and 20. The first is to amend a contract with a consultant. A little while back, back in 2011, we did a solid waste management plan. It was submitted to DEC. DEC responded back then to our plan. It was a draft plan. It fell through the cracks. Last year, they sent me a letter stating that they had some concerns that they wanted to wrap this solid waste management plan up. We thought we could possibly do this in-house, but there's a lot more involved with it. So we did have a contract with R.S. Lynch originally, and we would just like to amend their previous contract for them to complete the work, and then I need to transfer funds, which I have, to allow them to complete the work.
Moved by Supervisor McGowan, seconded by Supervisor Dickinson. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
There are no referral or pending items this month. Under information for discussion and review, I'll touch on the second one real quick. The household hazardous waste days are coming up. The first one is June 15th in Queensbury, and the second one is August 3rd in Warrensburg. I see that the city of Glens Falls is actually advertising it now, and I think a couple other communities are as well. So it's a great thing to get rid of some of those household hazardous waste. The next thing, which I don't have listed on there, is back in 2009, DOT and the Fed started a Tiger grant. These were 100% federally funded grants, no local match needed. Since then, they've changed the name of the grants to Build Grants, but now they're more specific to, and Andrew, you can correct the term, I want to say IRS type of communities, or what's the other term?
Opportunity.
Opportunity zones. And in the county, there's only 2 opportunity zones. One of them happens to be in Glens Falls. I'm not sure what section of Glens Falls, but it's a very small portion. The only other one is North Creek.
Can I correct that? The entire town of Johnsburg.
Oh, is it the entire, okay, entire town of Johnsburg. So we had a road project for North Creek, which was going to come down from 28 down to 28N, which is down by the school. It was a $600,000 road project. We've opted to put that on hold because at the last planning committee meeting with the AGFTC, they told us about these grants. So we met with Supervisor Hogan as well as Supervisor Simpson to discuss us pursuing this grant. It needs to be in by July 15th. We actually had our first meeting yesterday to see if we could pull everything together. We could actually potentially have $10 million for the whole corridor. We presented it to both Supervisor Hogan and Simpson yesterday that we are looking at going from 28 on one end to all the way out the other end to 28 on the other side. This could involve streetscape, possibly water, not necessarily sewer, new sidewalks, new road, just a whole bunch of different amenities that we can include as part of this. So we're going to move forward with this grant and see if we can get it in by July 15th. And if we do, I have told Supervisor Hogan that we would still do some maintenance up on that portion of Main Street that we were going to reconstruct, but just maintenance to get us through that. If November the decision is made on this grant, if we do get it, we will, I think we talked yesterday, a possibility of going out to construction by 2021. If we don't get the grant, then I would carry over that $600,000 into next year to finish that portion of Main Street. And that's all I have for that. The last thing I have is the Sweet Fire Tower, and I'm going to try to turn it over to you a little bit.
Okay, this is a project or a potential project for Warren County. There's an existing fire tower on top of Swede Mountain in the town of Hague, and there's been a lot of public interest in opening a public trail to the fire tower. There's fire tower challenges throughout the Adirondacks at these old fire tower stations, and we've been working to establish who actually owns the fire tower. The county owns the property. It has a maintenance easement right away to the tower to be able to maintain the tower. Well, the DEC came back just a couple of weeks ago, and their determination is that Warren County owns the tower. So that was good news, because without that happening, it's quite a process to get ownership back from the state. It's got to go through the different levels of state government. But so Warren County, in fact, owns the tower. And one thing that needs to be done is we really need to do an assessment of the condition of the tower. The tower is in fairly decent shape, from what I'm told from the forest ranger that's been up there. I don't think DPW has been up there yet. DPW, I've asked Kevin to take a trip up with his engineers to kind of do a visual and see where it's at and how much work may be needed to make this a viable project. The group, Assemblyman Steck is involved in it. I know Edna was involved in it. We've met with the owners of the property, which is Lime Timber, and they're willing to work out an agreement with Warren County to allow public access to Sweet Tower if we choose to move forward with this. And I'm trying to think of it, Lori Rankin, who is the executive director of the New York State Fire Tower Association. There's a lot of interest throughout the area, throughout the state, to make this happen. So now that we've got this information, I thought it was the right time to bring it to committee and see if we all decide that it's a good attraction to include in Warren County. Supervisor Dickinson.
So is there interest to include money?
That it doesn't. With all these projects, that's the...
You get a bicycle trail, you get some money.
We need a motion.
I think to answer Supervisor Dickinson's question really the right way is, I know Assemblyman Steck is very supportive of this and involved in the discussions, And I'm sure that, you know, he would be an asset when it comes to the funding part. We would have to talk to him about that.
So a trail would have to be created, or is there a...
There's an existing location now, but there's a hunting lease on that property, and they want to make sure the trail's in the right place.
So it has to be relocated?
I don't know exactly. We may be able to use that trail, most of it. It's just the entrance onto the trail may be something that's got to be changed because there's a big dip out of the parking lot, but I don't think we're creating, we're not cutting a new trail through the woods as far as I know.
How long is the hike?
1.2 miles, approximately. Supervisor Loeb.
Sure, exactly what you're looking for, but at the very least, I'd like to make a motion that we move forward with this.
Okay, well, I just, you know, my concern was that we needed to be fully aware and have our eyes wide open going into this project because it may, you know, with a commitment like that, it may involve funding. And the board would need to be on the same page to support this going forward. I think it's a good project personally, but...
Well, I'll second Bill's proposal and request that, you know, as part of this process, we start putting some of those numbers together and decide what needs to be done.
The next step for DPW is, as Matt said, I'll go out with the engineers and review it. Basically, what we need to do is a structural assessment on the tower itself. You need to make it safe for people to be able to travel or go up the towers. Most of these other fire towers, there's a few of them that they can hike to the fire tower, but they cannot climb them. But I think this is one based on that it's in really decent shape.
It's approximately 40 feet tall, about 40. It's not real. And I know Lori Rankin had said that it was in better shape than a lot of the other ones that she's been involved in. So we have a motion and a second on the floor. Any other discussion? Were you going to say?
What are we committing to? Just pursuing it, or?
Pursuing this project, yeah, that we want to make this.
I feel like I have nothing. I'm really all for it. I think I love fire tower hiking.
Are we...
And $6 a foot for a trail, which is what I was just quoted, I'm a little concerned that we need to know what's going to have to be put into the...
Well, that's what they're going to tell us.
We're not making a commitment to...
There's no money involved in this project. We've got to be committed to the project
So what is
research it.
So what is this commitment that you're asking?
This is that the county is interested in making this a reality, and the first step in assessing the financial responsibility is doing a structural analysis and finding out what that costs.
And I think with that structural analysis, you should include what it's going to cost to address the trail issues.
I can do that. I think we have to have a discussion, though, as if there is some type of diversion of the trail, what that may be.
We need to know that, what costs would be associated. Before I can commit that we are interested in doing this project, I need to know what it's going to cost.
Supervisor Frazier, it's in her town, I'm going to let her speak.
Well, the only what I'm going to say is at that meeting, there was a lot of discussion about them have other fire towers that have been done. They've had fundraisers to raise money. So I don't think it's like we're looking at big bucks coming from the county. My impression from that meeting, and there were a lot of people at that meeting, that they've had different fundraisers when they've done this with the fire towers. And some fire towers, they've done all the reconstruction with no money whatsoever other than the individual. So I don't look at this as something we're coming back to you to say, oh, we need oodles of money to do this, because you have an awful lot of people in your town that are like super interested in it. So I can't picture them not being out there saying, let's do this so we can raise a few bucks. I just look at, we're asking you to say it's okay for us to move forward with our project. I think that's what we're looking at this point.
Supervisor McGowan?
There is the Fire Tire Hiking Club, so I'm sure they can raise some money.
Yes, and they discussed that at another meeting, so yeah.
So are you ready for the question?
Well, just Google it.
All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Carried. Go ahead. Overtime
The last thing, the last couple of pages of your agenda is the overtime report and fuel report. I don't know why I didn't take off pending.
thought we did that.
It's not pending anymore. Not the overtime and fuel report, yeah.
Okay, any privilege of the floor? Anybody have anything else before our committee?
Motion to adjourn.
Motion adjourned, second. Those in favor? Aye. Opposed, carried.
Man, I gotta blow it, I'm running late.
Many times.